guys. I wanted to talk to you guys about a topic that is so near and dear to my heart because I understand the hurt and the pain behind why people are atheists, why people are agnostic, why people renounce from their faith, and because I've been through hurt. When I was younger, I grew up in the faith. I grew up going to church and going to kids' Bible studies, and I just never understood why, even though we were believers, why life was so hard for us financially. And to give a backstory, my dad, he works at McDonald's, and I just remembered a life of suffering. Like, I remember coming home and the lights weren't turned on. I remember we ate sugar. I just remember that I couldn't afford things. I remember that I missed so many school events because we did not have the finances. And I just remember people picking on us and picking on my dad for what he did for a living. And I heard my mom say this all the time. My mom would always say, like, why is it that people who don't even go to church, people who don't even believe in God, that they are doing so much better than us? And when my mom kept saying that, it planted a seed in me to make me say, like, why is it that our life is so hard? You know, during that time I was going through bullying, so financially struggling, and then kids picking on you. Like, I just didn't understand why our lives seemed so abnormal from other people, and it just made me so angry. And then as I got older, I remember one time I went to church, and my pastor, she asked for a $300 seed. And she said, if you have $300 and you would like to sow that, come stand to the front of the stage, which is wrong. And so they got up and they stood to the front. And then she looked down at the audience and she said, you guys should be ashamed of yourself. You know, the Lord is asking you for $300 and you can't even sow that. You know, and in my mind, I was thinking, what makes you think somebody has $300 to give you? And then that was the moment where I left church. That was the moment where I renounced from my beliefs. That was the moment where I was done with God, because I didn't understand why we were so faithful. We tithe our money. We were active in the church. And I didn't understand why life was such a struggle, why it was hard to pay our bills, why it was hard to eat some nights when we always had to ask people for money. Like, we didn't understand why life was so hard. And for me, like, I was done. And then on top of the financial struggles, you have people who call themselves a Christian verbally abusing you. So it's like the financial struggles plus, you know, Christians who say they're Christians but their actions are far from it. You know, you combine that together, and you wonder why so many people walk away from their faith. And for me, I made that decision to walk away from my faith, and I was like, I'm done with this God thing. But I didn't realize it at that time, but God never stopped pursuing me. When I tell you guys, life did not work for me. I tried to get back into school after a life-altering event happened with my mom, and it was hard for me to focus on classes, and I ended up losing my financial aid. So I tried so hard to get back into school. Nothing was working. I tried to get a loan, denied. I tried to get an appeal, denied. I tried to apply for financial aid, denied. And then I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe I need to get a job so that way I can pay for classes. I have been on so many job interviews. I have received so many, you know, thank you for your interview, but, you know, we went with another candidate emails that I started to dream about job offers. Like, I wanted a job so bad in the natural. I started to dream it in the supernatural. And plus, I couldn't get a relationship. It was like I would talk to a guy and they would ghost me. And I didn't understand why rejection was so common in my life. And later on, God explained to me that the reason why I caused them to reject you was because I want you to work for me. I have purpose over your life, and I need you to follow my path for your life, not your path. So that's a word for somebody. If you keep facing rejection, there's something behind that. But for me, like, my will, what I wanted to do was not working. I wanted to go to school to be a social worker. I wanted to get a career as a social worker. And of course, I wanted to be married, but just nothing was working. But I didn't know that God was pursuing me at that moment. So when I went to church, I wasn't taught that God can actually speak to you. I just knew to pray. I just knew to read my Bible. And I just remember it was this one incident with a guy, and it wasn't adding up. Like, just something inside of me was like, this isn't it. It's just something about him, and it's irritating me. And so, me not knowing that God was real, I remember going to bed that night, and I said, God, there is this guy, his name is so-and-so, and I just don't, I can't put my finger on it why something is bothering me. I need you to reveal to me who he is. I went to bed that night, and I had a dream. It was New Year's Eve themed, and I saw him with a woman and two small kids. I woke up from that dream, and I thought I was being paranoid, which was why I thought I dreamt that dream. But I believe a week later, his wife called me. And we had a really good conversation. I spoke to her for an hour. And every time I tell people that story, they're like, what? You spoke to the wife for an hour? We spoke for over an hour. And I remember I heard an infant crying. It sounded like a newborn. And I asked her, is that his baby? And she was like, yeah. And I just had a heart-to-heart, woman-to-woman conversation with her. And that was the moment I found out that God was real. And no, that's not a coincidence. No, that's not, oh, well, no. I asked God to show me something, and he showed it to me. Because he wasn't going to tell me that he was married with kids. He wasn't going to say it. Let's be honest. So God was like, okay, you asked me this, and I'm going to show you. And a similar situation happened where it was another guy, and I didn't know about him either. And I said, God, reveal who he is to me. Because the thing about this guy was he told me that he went to jail, and it's just something was going off because the story he told me at the time did not make sense. I was like, you spent this much time in jail over that? Like, it just didn't make sense to me. So I knew to pray. I said, God, I need you to reveal to me who he is. I kid you not, 3 minutes later, I received a text message from him, and he was cussing me out. I guess he called me and I didn't pick up the phone, and he was like, I don't give a what you doing. If I call you, you better pick up the phone. God revealed to me why he went to jail. God was telling me, if you end up in a relationship with this kid, you're going to be in a domestic violence situation. He was never aggressive or abusive when I spoke to him earlier, but the minute I asked God to reveal who this young man is to me, God revealed it. But he revealed it through him, through the way he texts me. And then after that, I was like, I have to know who God is. And it is so funny because when it came to relationships, God was speaking the loudest. Like, if I asked God a question about a guy, he immediately said no. I remember this one guy, I was deeper in my walk with God, so I have changed, and he got back in contact with me, and I was just excited. I was like, oh my goodness, maybe things can work this time because I changed. I just kept saying I changed. And at the time, I was watching a video, and as I kept saying, I changed, the woman in the video said, just because you changed, it didn't mean he changed. And again, God was speaking to me. So whenever it was relationship based, God kept saying, nope, I made sure these men rejected you. The guys who went ghost on me, God turned their hearts sour towards me. Kind of like with Pharaoh and the Israelites, how Pharaoh's heart hardened towards the Israelites. That's how I felt. God hardened those guys' hearts towards me because God knew the real person I was going to marry. And God knew that if I ended up with the guy I wanted to end up with, my life would be completely different right now. Probably heartbroken and all that mess. But God started to reveal himself to me, and then he started to reveal his purpose to me, and it was just such a beautiful thing. Once I said, you know what, God, clearly my will is not working. Let your will be done. That was the most powerful thing I have ever said. But God never gave up on me. He never stopped pursuing me. Even when I denounced from my faith, even when I said, God, I don't want nothing to do with you, even though I walked away from the church, even though I walked away from God, God never stopped pursuing me. And God was so loving enough. Even when I asked him questions, he answered me. And then that opened up a conversation with me like, okay, God is real. And the reason why it was so hard for me to hear from God in the beginning when I walked away from him was because my heart was closed. My heart was closed. And it was hard for God to get into my heart because I didn't want anything to do with him. And you have to ask yourself, is your heart hardened towards God? Is your heart closed from God? Because the reason why a lot of us can't hear from God is because you already said to yourself, you don't want nothing to do with God. So God's trying to speak to you. God's trying to show you things and you refuse to see it because you want nothing to do with him. Kind of like some atheists when they say God isn't real, but you didn't try to get to know God. Now, it's a different conversation when you try to know who God is and you had a hard time knowing if it was God speaking to you or if you didn't really hear anything. That's a conversation. But if you never tried to have a relationship with God, if you never tried God for yourself and you are saying God isn't real, then we're speaking from a place of ignorance. And a lot of people, unfortunately, is in that place of ignorance. But it's when you make yourself available and say, God, I have tried everything, but I need to try you now. Because I've heard so many things about you. I've heard experiences from people's testimonies and miracles, and now I need you to speak to me. I need you to tell me who you are in my life. And once you say that, God will begin to speak to you. Because the student is not ready for the teacher. But you had to open up your heart towards God. You had to open up your heart towards what he has to say for you in your life. And you have to let go of hurt, of church hurt, of pain, of disappointment. And God revealed to me that there's a reason why my life was struggle. It was a purpose behind it. Now, God did not cause it. Let's not confuse that. God did not cause that. But because I went through that in my life, when God blessed me with the platforms he will bless me with, now I know how to minister to people who have been financially struggling and who have looked at God the way I've looked at God. I'm able to speak to people who have been bullied, who have been verbally abused, and I'm able to speak at them and to them because I've been there. I know how they felt. I know how defeating it is. Now I'm able to relate to those people because of my personal experiences. So nothing that I went through in life was in vain. And it was hurtful at the time, but now I know how hard they're hurting. And when I see people in comment sections and I can tell they're so angry at God that they have been through too much, and they were like, God, I'm not doing this no more. Now I know how they feel because I once felt that way. So Allow God to come into your heart. Allow God to speak to you. Allow God to be headship over your life. Give God a chance. Try. And if something happens, allow it to happen. Allow God's love to enter into your life. It will be the best thing that you will ever experience. Allow God's peace. Now, that's one thing that I can say. When I was in the world, I never had peace. I was always stressing. I was always paranoid. I was always an overthinker. I just never had peace in life. When I was going through something, I went through it on my own. It was painful. It was hurtful. It was depressing. But now, if I'm going through something, I go to my Father. And when I go to God, he hits me with his peace. And a best way to describe God's peace is 1 minute you are so angry, like you're so pissed, and then the next second you're better. You're peaceful, you're calm, you're relaxed. And that is the peace of God. That is the beauty of God. So surrender all you have to God and allow God to be the Lord of your life, and just allow all the beautiful miracles that he has for you, and to ask God, why did my life turn out the way it turned out? Why did I go through so many things in life? And you can ask God that question. But I need you to surrender to God. I need you to give God a chance, because you will never know what God had for you if you never tried. So I love you guys. I hope you guys have a good day. I hope you guys are blessed. I hope you guys are safe. And just know that God loves you and he cares for you and he has a plan for you, and you have purpose over your life. You were created with purpose. Everyone on this planet has a purpose. So allow God to reveal your purpose to you. So I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.